Hello peeps, welcome back to Big Deck Player with me, Matt Sparks. On today's show we are taking a look at a Control Warrior deck. This was posted to Hearthstone by Mendi, and it's just simply called Mendi's Control Warrior. So here's the deck. Now if you've ever played a Control Warrior deck before, you'll probably notice that this isn't too dissimilar to things that you've already played before. I haven't played a Control Warrior for quite a while, and I figured it was probably time that I would go back to what I was fairly good at, which is playing Control Warrior. So here is the deck. We start off with 2 Executes. I think Execute is pretty much a staple of most warrior decks, just because it's so good. It's like the best form of hard removal, really, I guess. For 1 mana you destroy a damaged enemy minion, so as long as you've got a means to damage a minion, you've got a means to execute that minion, so that's pretty cool. We have 2 Shield Slams, so that deals 1 damage for every armor that you have to a minion, which is also very, very good, and especially in a Control Warrior deck, because you generally find that you get quite a lot of armor. In the past, I've had up to like 30 armor playing as a Control Warrior, which is just ridiculous, but awesome. The Fiery Wind Axe, or the Fiery War Axe in this case, at 2 mana. Again, another staple of the Warrior deck. You usually get 2 weapons in a Control Warrior. It's usually this one at 2 mana, and then the Death's Bite at 4 mana. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Also at 2 mana, we have 2 Armor Smiths. So whenever a friendly minion takes damage, including the Armor Smith, you generate 1 armor. So this is really, really cool, especially if you've got a few minions on the board that are going to be taking damage, or putting it out with like a taunt. So the taunt is bound to take damage, generating you some armor. It's a really nice way of generating armor, keeping yourself alive for the late game, because that's kind of what you want to do as a Control Warrior. You want to survive and control the board as much as possible throughout the early and mid game, and then towards the end of the mid game and the beginning of the late game is when you start bringing out your big hitters. Also at 2 mana, we have 2 Cruel Taskmasters. Now I keep one of these aside. I don't mind having one in my starting hand, because a 2/2 for 2 is not too bad. Plus, that deal 1 damage, you can do it on a minion, so you can get rid of stuff like Leper Gnomes or Silverhand Recruits. Stuff like that. Gives you that little bit of extra control. Also, it can be used on the Armor Smith. Armor Smith takes 1 damage, generates 1 armor, and then the Armor Smith then hits for 3. Which is also very good. Having an early game called Taskmaster is pretty good, but I always keep 1 back for late game. One of the new cards, Bash, 3 mana, deals 3 damage, gain 3 armor. It's not too bad, and it can be quite useful in the Control Warrior. I am not 100% sure whether it's better than having 2 shield blocks, which is another thing we have at 3 mana. So shield block generates 5 armor and draws a card. Now this is a guaranteed card. And 5 armor, which is pretty nice. So I'm not 100% sure whether Bash is a worthy replacement. I guess Bash does do the 3 damage without you having to combo shield block with like a shield slam, because obviously that's 4 mana for 5 damage. I don't know. I quite like the shield block gaining the 5 armor and then combining that with a shield slam, so you do 5 damage to a minion. That's always pretty nice, especially as there's a lot of fairly big minions that have like 5 health, like Sludge Belchers, Fire Elementals, Sylvanas. You know, there's quite a lot of minions that have 5 health, and so being able to just take them out with relative ease is pretty good. But yeah, so I'm not sure about Shield Bash. I'm still deciding on whether or not I like it. Maybe it's just because I've been playing Control Warriors with shield block and having 2 of those shield blocks in. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it pans out. Also at 3 mana we have 2 Acolyte of Pain for some card draw. Only problem is obviously if these get silenced, then you're in trouble when it comes to drawing cards, which is kind of why I liked having 2 shield blocks, because at least you're going to get a couple of cards from the shield blocks. Acolyte of Pain though can be pretty good. You can also combo the Cruel Taskmaster with the Acolyte of Pain, so you can deal 1 damage to the Acolyte of Pain, making it draw a card, and then it'll be a 3/2, so then it might be able to trade with something, which is pretty good, which is why I quite like having one of the Taskmasters a bit earlier in the game. At 3 mana, we have a Big Game Hunter, because people are still running Dr. Boom, and you're still going to need to get rid of it. At 4 mana, we have 2 Death's Bite, which is what I was talking about earlier. If you've got a few minions on the board already, say you've got an Acolyte of Pain and your Armor Smith on the board already, using the Death Rattle whilst they're on the board is really useful because they both take 1 damage each. So the Acolyte of Pain will draw a card, but the Armor Smith will generate 2 armor. So that's pretty nice. Plus, it does 4 damage, so that's always good. And don't forget, on the last swing of this, if you're going against something that's got 5 health, like a Sludge Belcher, for example, it'll do 4 damage initially, and then 1 damage will kill the Sludge Belcher. So that's something to remember as well. So even if something's got 5 health, you can still kill it with the final blow of the Death Spite. Now, this is where things get a little different. We've got 2 brawls. I'm still not 100% sure if it's necessary for 2 brawls. I've found that 1 brawl has been doing the job so far, but there are a lot of aggro decks and a lot of rush decks that are in the meta at the moment. It's not just face hunters anymore. There's face hunters, there's face rogues, there's the Riddler-din paladins that seem to flood the board, and then there's the paladins that have the Murloc Knight, and that can get out of control really quickly if you're not careful. So in my experience so far playing this deck, I've only ever needed 1, but I think if I was to come up against those kind of decks regularly, I think the second one would come in handy. At 5 mana also, we have 2 Sludge Belchers. Sludge Belchers are awesome. I think they're probably one of the best taunts in the game, if not the best taunt. Anything that they put into the Sludge Belcher that doesn't die is obviously prone then to an execute. A new addition to the Control Warrior, Justicar Trueheart, one of the new legendary minions. The battle cry for Justicar Trueheart replaced your starting hero power with a better one. In the case of a warrior, instead of generating 2 armor with your hero power, you start generating 4 armor, which is really good, especially in a Control Warrior. Only sad thing is, obviously, Justicar Trueheart, she's only got 3 health, so she's probably going to die pretty quickly. But the most important thing about that is the battle cry. If she stays alive and she can do 6 damage to something, even better. But getting that 4 armor for each time you use your hero power, really, really good. Also at 6 mana, we have 2 Shield Maidens. A 5/5 for 6, but you gain 5 armor on the battle cry, which is really, really awesome. This is, again, another nice way to combo with Shield Slam, because you get that 5 armor. So if your opponent plays a Shield Maiden, you can play your own Shield Maiden and then Shield Slam afterwards to take them out. So that's pretty cool. And a 5/5 body is pretty solid. Talking of 5/5 bodies, we've got another one, also at 6 mana, in the form of Sylvanas Windrunner. The death rattle, obviously, of Sylvanas is that you take control of a random enemy minion. Shield Slam will work on Sylvanas, so if you get really desperate, as long as you've got 5 armor, you can Shield Slam your own Sylvanas to take control of your opponent's minion. At 7 mana we have Baron Geddon. This is one that sometimes gets put into Control Warrior decks and sometimes it doesn't. It's entirely up to you as to whether you want to put this in. I've found that so far it's been pretty useful, especially with a lot of these aggro decks that are being played recently. If you can survive till turn 7 and you play Baron Geddon, most of your opponent's stuff is probably going to start fizzling out, because a lot of these aggro decks, most of the minions don't have more than like 3 health, maybe 2 or 3 health. Can be particularly useful against the Riddler-dins that have been creeping up. I'm pretty sure I put a video about that kind of deck recently called Top 4 Paladin. So if you haven't seen that deck or you're not sure what I'm talking about, you can check that video out and it will show you what it's about. So Baron Geddon is one of those ones where you might want to leave it in, you might not, you might want to put something else in instead. So far in my experience he's done pretty well. He either gets silenced or he gets killed very, very quickly, which is kind of good in a way because it kind of means that your opponent burns off their removal that they might want to use for something else, because you've got quite a lot of big minions from this point on. And because he's got 7 attack, they might just decide to use a big game hunter to kill him off, and then next turn you can bring out this guy at 7 mana, also Dr. Boom. Dr. Boom is still being used in most decks, so you know he's going to be used in this deck. At 8 mana we have a Grommash Hellscream. Now this is why I keep one of the Cruel Taskmasters back for this very moment. At turn 10, play your Grommash Hellscream, then you play your Cruel Taskmaster, giving Hellscream Enrage and extra attack, making him do 12 damage with charge. By turn 10, your opponent's going to be pretty low already, I imagine. I usually use that as a finisher, If they're down to 12 or less health, then I'll use that as a finisher and just finish the game off. To help get them down to that point, we have an Alexstrasza, which sets a hero's remaining health to 15. This is pretty cool. If you play this turn 9, you set their hero's health to 15. If they don't kill Alexstrasza on their turn, then turn 10 you can Grommash and call Taskmaster to win the game. And then finally, we at 9 mana also we have Ysera. At the end of your turn, she adds a dream card to your hand. To be honest, I haven't really needed to use Ysera very much, because most of the time it's over before I really find that I need her. I think Ysera is one of those cards in this deck that if you are in control of the board and your opponent's not really playing very much, or they're playing kind of control as well, then Ysera might be quite useful to put out. So that is the deck. That is Mendi's Control Warrior deck. It's pretty fun. I've always been a fan of the Control Warrior, so I might be a little bit biased in that. It's quite an expensive deck. To craft everything in this deck from scratch is 13,800 dust, which is huge amounts and complete different from last week's deck, which was really, really cheap, which was like under 1,600 dust. So, if you play this deck, let me know how you get on. If you make any videos using this deck, feel free to link them to me and I'll be sure to come check them out. If you have any suggestions for any future decks that you'd like to see featured on Big Deck Player, then please don't hesitate to get in contact and I'll be sure to come and investigate your deck. Otherwise, I will see you next week for some more Big Deck Player. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.